nerves. The nerve of some people. The nerve of some people. Can't take a joke when the joke's on you. All the nerve. The nerve of some people. The nerve of some people. That's what I say. You'll never make friends acting like you do.
Hi YouTube, this is Raven. I'm a survivor of a 16-year marriage to a covert narcissist, or someone with a personality disorder. I'm not sure whether he had NPD or BPD, borderline personality disorder, as he's not been officially diagnosed by a mental health care provider with NPD or BPD. This is just simply my opinion based on a 16-plus year marriage and observation of his behavior. Now, that being said, I think that this video is going to go into the Narcissists Are Ridiculous series because it's just so ridiculous. I'm not even sure how to process it yet. But narcissists have no common sense. They don't seem to have the common sense that other people have. And especially when they're in social situations or very stressful situations like funerals, weddings, or, in the hospital, that narcissism comes out big time. And they act like they don't have the common sense that the good Lord gave them. And an example of this, if you've ever watched Kevin Hart, he's a comedian. He's a lot of times on HBO or he's on the Comedy Central. And he has a sketch where he's talking about a funeral. And, all the family is there at the funeral. And they say, does anyone want to stand up and talk about, the deceased, some memories you got of the deceased. And one relative stands up, it's the relative that everybody knows. It's like, oh God, what is he about to say? And the relative gets up like, yeah, I'd just like to say, yeah, I'm really gonna miss her. I loved Grandma a lot. Now, Grandma owed me $50. Now, who's gonna take care of that? Is that you? Is that you, brother so and so? You gonna take care of this $50? Yeah, we'll talk about this after the funeral. Yeah, things like that, just totally inappropriate. And that's what happened yesterday. Not at a funeral, but my son had a minor procedure yesterday. He had surgery. It was an outpatient procedure to correct a problem that he's had since he was little, since he was a baby. So he had this procedure done. And so, of course, I have to deal with NARC and, in this situation. And, just to let you know, my son is doing great. He actually, for having surgery, I mean, he was pretty calm about it. He was like, that's cool. What's this? What's that? He had all these questions. They even gave him a stuffed animal. I mean, the pediatric nurses were cool. He named this one Nurse Louie. So this is now a nurse. And they gave him the mask that they put on his face. They even let him put stickers on it. So he put stickers on it. And last night he was playing with Louie and he was, putting Louie to sleep, and it's like, Louie's going to have surgery, and then I saw Louie doing this to one of his stuffed animals. I'm like, what is Louie doing? Louie's teaching the other animal how to do CPR. I was like, okay, that's awesome. So, my son he's an awesome kid. I love him to death. He's amazing. And he seems to be able to deal with these situations a lot better than I can. But what had happened was a few weeks ago when we found out that my son was going to have surgery, she's not even his stepmother. She's not married to NARC. She's not even his stepmother. She's just the live-in girlfriend. And she was like, oh, buddy, she said this on FaceTime. We're all going to be there to make sure that you're okay. I'm like, what? She's going to be there for this outpatient surgery? And so I kept thinking in my mind, well, she's probably not going to show up because we have to be there really early in the morning and we're going to be there for hours and hours. And, she has a kid, and her kid needs to go to school. She has a job. So I was like, okay, she's not going to show up. So yesterday we go there. We didn't have to be there as early as I thought. We had to be there at 8:30 in the morning. So, we get there and I check in with the nurse. And, we're sitting down and the nurse comes to talk to us and she's talking about, how the day is going to go. Sorry, I'm drinking coffee because I'm exhausted from yesterday. I'll explain why in the video. But she comes to talk to us and she's going over the procedure, like, this is how long the procedure is going to take. This is how long he'll be in post-op. This is the kind of anesthesia we're going to use. She's just going over the basic parts. Narc comes rushing in. I mean, he's late already. It's like 8:40, I think. We were supposed to be there at 8:30. We'd already been there for like 30 minutes. Narc comes rushing in. He sits down, in the chair. He's brought this huge book bag, that has his work computer in it because he couldn't be bothered to take off today for his son's surgery, or at least take a half day off. So he's got his book bag with his work computer in it and all of his stuff and his notes and everything. He sits down and the nurse is like, "Oh, you must be the father." He's like, "Yeah, yes, I'm the father." Yeah. And she goes through the whole spiel. And then when she gets to the end of it, she's like, "Do you have any questions?" His one question was, "Yes. Do you have Wi-Fi here?" That's your question? Your question isn't, what are the risks associated with surgery and anesthesia? It's like, no, do you have Wi-Fi? So the nurse explains to us that, once we take your son back to the preoperative area, only 2 people can go back. She said, that'll be mom and dad. And we're like, okay. And so my mother was there. She'd come for moral support. And she's like, that's okay. I'll sit out here in the waiting room. So they come and get us, and they take us back there. And, my son's getting ready for surgery. We're putting the gown on him. And the, Narc is sitting there, and he has this huge bandage on his leg. Now, in one of the videos, I talked about how he was pretending to be Paul Bunyan a couple weeks ago and cut his leg really bad, enough to where a chunk of his bone is gone. He cut it down to the bone. And his girlfriend had sent a text to the children, not to me, saying, "Your father was in an accident. He's in the hospital. I tried to call earlier, but no one answered." Now, when you hear the words, someone had an accident, or someone was in an accident, they are in the hospital, what goes through your mind? It's like, oh my God, horrible car accident. Someone's in the hospital, they might be at death's door. They're in ICU, whatever. So, but, it wasn't. He was just in the emergency room. So I look down, I'm like, why are you still wearing an ace bandage around your leg? Because I had seen pictures of this cut, and the cut is not as bad as he described it. And, I've seen much, much worse. And he unwraps it. He unwraps it because he's going to show me. He unwraps it. And he was wearing shorts, these ugly shorts. They're plaid shorts. He looks like a dork to start with. And he's unwrapping this ace bandage he has around his leg. And he's got like a piece of gauze. The gauze is, there's stuff oozing out of it still. And I said, shouldn't there be granulation tissue by now? Shouldn't the sutures be sealing up and healing? And he's like, "Oh, no, I was told that I need to wear this until June 1st. I was like, what ER did you go to? Because I'm looking at how it was stitched up. And I'm like, that doesn't look very good. And he's like, "Oh, I went to the one in," and he said, the suburb that we lived in. So that's not a hospital. That's a standalone ER. And I'm like, you went to a standalone ER for this? That wasn't a good idea. And he's like, "It's fine. I'm fine. My leg is fine." I'm like, well, it's not fine. It's still oozing crap. And he's like, "They gave me an antibiotic." I said, "Yeah, because chainsaw wounds are dirty. You can get sepsis. You can get a blood infection." And he's like, "It was a clean blade. It was a brand new blade." I'm like, okay, whatever. It's not a blade. It's a chain, but, there again. So, his girlfriend had made out like this was some big deal. He was in the hospital. I had visions in my head that he had lost so much blood they'd had to call the ambulance. They couldn't get to stop bleeding. Oh no, he went to like a standalone ER, which is like a glorified urgent care. So he was never in the hospital, and he was never really receiving, very emergency care, like, oh my God, he's going to bleed to death. So when he describes that a chunk of bone is missing, I'm like, it's probably like a little nick of bone. It's not a chunk of bone. Because he couldn't even tell me what bone. I said, "Well, is it your tibia or your fibula?" He's like, "It's the bone in my leg." I'm like, "Well, yeah, but there's 2 bones below your knee. Is it the tibia or the fibula?" "I don't know. It's this one here. It's this one here." And he's pointing. I'm like, okay, whatever. Obviously, it's not that big of a deal. Because I think if I was missing a chunk of bone, I would know what bone I was missing it from. So anyways, the nurse tells us, "I'm going to go get some Versed." It's something that's going to calm him down. We're going to give it to him. We're going to calm him down before we take him back for surgery, and then we'll give him the anesthesia. So I'm sitting there, And I'm thinking I'm in the clear now. Girlfriend has not shown up. I'm figuring, she had the decency to know to stay away because she has nothing to do with my kids. My kids a lot of times don't even go to her place, his place. Sometimes it'll be 7 weeks at a time before they go there. And then once they are there, she has nothing to do with them. She's not stepmommy of the year. She goes off and does her own thing. So I was like, okay, you know what? She's decided, it's going to take hours and hours. She's not going to show up. So I'm sitting there, talking with my son, and, we're, getting ready for surgery. And the curtain goes, comes back like this. And so for a moment, I'm like, oh, it must be the nurse returning. Oh, no, it's girlfriend. And she rushes in, and this is like one of these moments where everything goes in slow motion, like where you're watching an accident and you can't believe that it's happening. She rushes in like, oh, buddy, are you okay? Are you okay? Oh, and she's kissing on him and giving him a big hug. Oh, are you okay? I wanted to know you were okay. You're going to be all right. And then she sits on his bed. She sat down on his bed like she's his mother and is leaning over him like, oh, and fawning over him. And for a minute, I'm sitting there like, what the hell just happened? I'm like, why? It took me a minute to process. This is the girlfriend. This is like, wait a minute. Why is she here? Only 2 people were allowed back here, and somehow she has pushed her way through. Because my mother was sitting in the waiting room, and she was keeping an eye out for her. And she somehow got past my mother's eagle eye, and I think it's because she came in. There's another entrance that she came in, and she slipped past her, came through that entrance instead of coming in the elevator like you're supposed to. And, slipped past her, and she must have went up to the desk and said, my stepson is in there. He's having surgery. I must be there. She must have done something like that for them to let her in. So she sits there for a few minutes, and she starts to engage me in conversation and engage Narc. And she's talking about something totally different than the surgery. She's like, do you remember that bowling alley that we were going to go to, a couple days ago, that really nice one in the downtown area? Well, I know for a fact that there's not a nice bowling alley in the downtown area. And I'm looking at her, I'm like, you mean the crappy one on Park Road? The one that's like 50 years old? Oh, yeah, that one is so nice. Yeah, it's so nice. I'm like, okay, this woman doesn't know shit about anything. So I'm sitting there like, yep. I know all about the one on Park Road. Been there, it's a crappy bowling alley. And so she's trying to, have this conversation with Narc. I get on my phone and I text my mother, the bitch is here. The bitch is here. She's sitting on his bed. And my mother went ballistic. She was like, oh my God, no, this is not happening. She went and found the charge nurse. And she goes up to the charge nurse and she's like, look, we were told that only 2 people could be back there, and I'm following the rules. And the ex-husband's girlfriend is back there pretending to be stepmommy. And the nurse is like, I'll handle this. I love nurses. I love, especially charge nurses. I love them. And she goes back there and she assesses the situation like nurses do, assesses it. She comes back and talks to my mother and she says, yeah, she's even sitting on his bed. And my mother went crazy. And the nurse is like, I'll take care of this. She's like, I can tell Mama is not happy. And I was like, no, that's an understatement. Mama is about to go ballistic. Mama is about to go full Sergeant First Class Raven on her butt. I'm just like, like, don't cause a scene in front of your son, but I want to kill her. It's like, okay. Yeah, I've had training. I've had hand-to-hand combat training. I could kill her if I want to, but I don't want to go to prison. I'm sitting there. And so the nurse comes back and she says, we have to switch out now because we can only have a certain amount of people back here, and it's Grandma's turn. And she points to Narc's girlfriend's like, you out. And so she leaves. And apparently this pissed her off. And it pissed Narc off too, because he saw it. And he's like a toddler, that she's being asked to leave. And so, my mother comes back there and we're able to spend time with him before he goes off to surgery. Well, then they take my son off to surgery. We go back out to the waiting room, and Narc and his girlfriend are like way on the other side of the waiting room. And there's like partition wall. They're like way on the other side. And I can see her leaning towards him, giving him the business. I mean, she's like, like this. I can't tell what she's saying. Like, yeah. And so I think she was pissed because she's probably saying, I drove all the way downtown here to be with your son and with you, and I get kicked out of that room, and I have to come out here in the waiting room like I'm nobody. And she's doing the head thing, And I'm like, good. So we sit down, and, my son is in surgery, and there's a little old lady that she's in charge of telling all the family, what's going on in surgery. And she's walking around with her phone. And every time she gets a phone call, she goes to the different family. Well, Narc and his girlfriend, she had her computer. And so both of them set up their work computers, and they're working. And I'm watching how they're working together, and I'm like, I turned to my mom like, yeah, they knew each other. When they worked together, they knew each other while we were still married. So now I'm totally convinced now that he was cheating on me with this woman when we were married, and he knew her. They worked together. But anyways, they're working, and he keeps looking over my way because I guess he thinks that I'm going to somehow sneak back into the post-op area. Kind of like his girlfriend did. She snuck in. So the little old lady, Edith, she's coming around, and she comes up to me, and she's like, your son's out of surgery now. He's doing good. He's still sleeping, though. I'll come get you when it's time to take you to see him. I'm like, okay. So then Narc gets up, and he's like freaking out, like, what did she say? What did she say? I'm like, he's still sleeping. I'll let you know. Well, this went on for, about an hour. And, that's not uncommon, for it to take an hour or so for somebody to wake up from surgery. Because I remember that from clinicals. But, Narc could not sit still. He's up walking around. He would walk to the bathroom. He would walk back. He would walk over to Edith's desk, and he's like leaning over Edith's desk, wanting to know, like, when can we see our son? And she's just like, go sit down. I'll call you. And so he's back. Yeah. He did this like 4 or 5 times, and I'm trying to study, but I can't study because I'm sitting there, worried that he is going to try and sneak back, and see my son, or try to take girlfriend back, and then I can't get back to see my son. And, I don't need to be dealing with this. My son is sick. I don't need to be dealing with this. So finally, Edith comes and gets me, and he's out of post-op, the first part of post-op phase, and, he's recovering. And so Narc and I go back. He leaves girlfriend, back there. And we go back to see my son. And my son, he's still shivering because he's trying to get over the effects of anesthesia. He's got blankets on. He's eating a popsicle. And he was like, Mom, Dad, I'm so glad you're here. And then he said something. He said, I'm so glad to see you two together. And then he stopped. No, I didn't mean like together like, you're married, but I meant like in the same room together, that I don't have to see you separate. And Narc was there for a few minutes. He sees how, our son's doing, and he says, okay, well, buddy, I got to get back to work. Your mommy will take care of you. And my son, he got tears in his eyes, and his little lips started quivering like, oh, Dad. I could have strangled him. It's like, your son is recovering from surgery, and you have to go back to work? Like, it's obvious that, I hate the fact that Narc is around them so much, and he has an influence on them, but at the same time, our son loves him, and he wants his dad around. And Narc is like, oh, I've got to go back to work. But I think it was also that Narc just did not want to be bothered, because this was taking a whole lot longer than he thought. But, and I think he was hungry too, because this was like 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and I guess his stomach had taken over. So he left, But one of the things that I noticed during the day is that, he is definitely not a catch. He was wearing kitten underwear. What grown man wears kitten underwear? And the way I could tell that he was wearing kitten underwear is that when he would bend over to like pick up his computer, his shorts would go down, like a plumber's shorts. And there were these boxer shorts with kittens on them. I'm like, what the hell? And he's already dressed in plaid shorts. He was just dressed dorky. And I'm like, what does this woman see in him? And, I'm convinced now that she is a narc. Because, she showed up to cause drama. She wanted to be the center of attention because she's like, oh, buddy, I'm so worried about you. I'm so worried. So she's obviously a narcissist. And he wanted attention by putting that huge bandage on his leg, so that people would have sympathy for him. I don't know about the kitten underwear. That's the kind of attention I don't think you want. But anyways, narcissists are ridiculous, and they're ridiculous when it comes to these kind of situations because they don't have the good sense that God gave them. So anyways, that's all for now. Be vigilant, be safe, take care.